I'm making a video. I don't exactly know what the subject entirely will be. It's going to be this Ferro-cell stuff, a little bit of debunking, and then David D. Hilster, who has actually ended up talking about Ferro-cell. Something that's been around for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, as I've attempted to point out, is just covered in mythology, not any facts. So people keep talking about ferrocells, and they keep talking about it's doing something, and they just haven't done any fair analysis and to recognize what actually is happening. So as I've pointed out before, you can figure it out eventually. So anyway, the Fractal Woman actually has a video of her ferrocell where she's actually doing it where she has the cell without the lights, so she has it above everything. And so now you can really see what's happening. That LED lights, every single LED light creates a little smiley face. And that's all this pattern is a bunch of little smiley faces. Every light creates one smiley face. So there's 2 lines coming out per LED, as I pointed out in the previous video. And that's all there is. That's all it's made out of. And the truth is, okay, if you do a little bit of work, a little experimenting, which I did, and you'll find why it's happening. So when I looked under a magnifying glass, this is the reality. Okay, there's a magnet, and all the little ferro bits, they're thick and long here towards around the magnet, as you would expect, and then they all just line up. They all just point right at the magnet, and they're all much longer than they are wide. So they're like exactly like I'm drawing them here, like little hairs, and they all point right towards the magnet. Perfect straight lines right towards the magnet. Nothing unusual at all. Just exactly what you would expect for a plain magnet. Now obviously when you create a complex field, you're going to create all kinds of different orientations, and so you'll change how the pattern looks. But the standard pattern is being created by this, and so essentially when there's a light coming from an angle underneath, there's one so the little ferro bit would be shaped something like this, and what's happening is the light is obviously reflecting off the surface, and the thickness of the ferro material is dictating how thick the light is. So and obviously the thickness of the glass gives you the illusion of more depth, but it's just because there's a specific reflecting angle. So what's happening is the light is just creating an arc, and that arc is perfectly consistent with the alignment of the little ferro bits, in a sense that the angles are right to reflect the light to your eye. So if you combine the angle of your eye and then the angle you're looking at with the angle to the light, which is in this case down and in a direction, when you combine those angles, the angle of reflection will be the same for these vectors. So it's just a combination of the angle to your eye, okay, so your eye's over here, combined with the orientation of the bit and the direction of the light. And when those things are all the same, then you see the photon. When they're not the same, you don't. So at one angle you'll see the light. So it's like the Brewster angle. It's some specific angle for which you'll get the light that will come to you instead of light going someplace else. Over here, over here, or over here, over here. It comes to you when it's that one angle. And that's all there is. There's no magic to this at all. You're not seeing the magnetic field. You're seeing a distortion of it. You're seeing a perversion of it. It's not an accurate representation. It's like me making, I could turn this video into an outline video, or I could do just contrast, harsh black and white. I could do lots of things to manipulate this video, And it wouldn't be representing me, it'd just be representing me perverted, by how you reflect light off of me, or how you interpret the light that's coming off of me. So, but that's all there is here. There's nothing, the Ferro-cell is not revealing the magnetic field. It's not showing you the truth. It's showing you a distortion of the truth. It's showing you a manifestation of optical effects. But it's not reality. It's like a mirage in the desert. It's not true. So you're seeing something in the vapor. You're not seeing something on the land. It's a distortion of reality. And it should be just known for that. It's a toy. It's a nice little visual toy. But it's not a scientific instrument. It's not a telescope. It's not a microscope. It's not showing you the truth. That's really all. I shouldn't have to say any more than that. I mean, the images speak for themselves. Like I said, just look. I'll post a link to her video. Just look at it, because you'll see it in its crudest form. This is the crudest you get. They're just dull little arcs of light, and each one perpendicular to an LED. That's it. That's all they are. So for every LED, there's a certain angle where you get the arc of light, and that's it. One arc per LED. And now all you're going to do is, by changing the magnetic field, you'll change the orientation of the little bits, and you'll get different arcs. But that's it. But they're not reflecting where the ferro material is oriented or how it's oriented. It's a distortion of the facts, not a reveal of the truth. It's just, again, this is sort of like pathetic physics, that everybody just keeps jumping to these conclusions. So it's nothing worse than the two-slit experiment, where we have an effect and that people just have to jump. They have to jump to a conclusion. And, when there needs to be a little bit deeper picking. There needs to be some people doing some more experiments to see if they can tease out the truth. And again, this could be teased out by just doing it with one LED, which I'm sure Ken Wheeler's done. So you do this experiment with one LED the way I did it, and that's all you get. You get one little arc of light, and that's it. And yes, it looks very three-dimensional and very woo-woo-woo, but that's only because they're using glass that's this friggin' thick. So, totally unremarkable in terms of a way of gleaning the truth. It's a terrible device for seeing reality. If you want to see a distortion of reality, great. But if you want to find the truth, not the way to go. Alright, so anyway, so now off to Dissident Douchebag. So this is called most colossal hypocrite. I mean, again, he makes a movie called Einstein Wrong, where he doesn't prove Einstein wrong. He just attempts to, in some way, humiliate the dead man, and clearly, essentially mocks Hawkins in the trailer. And then he claims that he's on some high ground where, oh, everybody's so wonderful. I don't treat anybody shabbily. I give everybody a fair. I'm totally unbiased and uncorrupted, and it's just a garbage. I mean, he only has respect for, you have to wear a tinfoil hat. If you don't have an official tinfoil hat, you'll get no respect. He just likes cranks. It's not like, and his hypocrisy is grotesque, because the cranks should be held to the same standards, at least as high as the stupid standards we're holding regular physics to. So if you can't hold your own people to the same standards, then what good is it? You're going to replace garbage with garbage. I mean, we could agree that conventional physics has jumped the evidence. And then you're just saying to all the dissidents, go ahead and jump the evidence. Evidence jumping is great. Who needs evidence? Evidence, smevidence. That's junk. That's for losers. I mean, it's just, it's so hypocritical. And the joke, bigger joke is that I've actually paid some attention to their theory. He's critiquing theories he hasn't paid any attention to at all. He's done this cursory view, and that's it. and yet he's claiming some right to critique. Just amazing hypocrisy. You know, he speaks of what he knows nothing about, and then he'll say something stupid like, well, it's a great model, it's a great, yeah, it's great. Oh, yeah, I don't know what the hell it is. I'll just say it's great because it's not their model. So it doesn't matter how unevidenced it is, doesn't matter how unfounded it is, doesn't matter how many established experiments demonstrate to be impossible, he'll just keep saying it. And again, he takes no critique of anything he says is ever responded to. So he'll just keep saying flat earth, well, I mean small earth, same difference really, and not pay any attention to the arguments made of why that doesn't make any sense. So why don't you, like I said, if you're going to claim the earth had half the gravity 10,000 years ago or whatever, then why don't you explain what the atmosphere was made out of, what the organisms that existed breathed. How exactly, if the boiling point of water was 100 degrees, how there'd be any water on the planet at all anyway. It's just so stupid. All right, so this is his little critique of me, really. You know, so I just, it's just hilarious. So he veils his innuendos. He won't actually say my name. It's just such a coward, you know, in this petty way of having his argument. At least I play your crappy videos. I played your father's videos and explained why I don't think it makes any sense. I've pointed out to you that your Denew effect, you keep saying Denew effect. So Denew effect is incredibly weak attraction and repulsion. Insanely weak. I can't even describe how weak it is. It's so frickin' weak. Right? And he claims this is the most powerful force in the universe, the magnetism. I mean, magnetism is insanely powerful. You know, for no energy in, you get a lot of shit out. Charged, really strong forces, especially up close. And there's no evidence this Denew effect can create any of that. And so it's like saying, well, the universe uses a 40 million ton crane to lift a feather. And you're saying, no, the universe is going to be, over time, everything gets whittled down to efficiency. The universe would never use a 40 million ton crane to lift a feather. And there's no way your swirly crap, which would take megatons of energy to create a tiny bit of attraction. There's no way that can make sense. But you won't ever respond to that critique. You're just such a petty fuck.
About what we're doing. We're going to be the first to tell you. We could be off our rockers. Our theory could be just, I mean, it could be just...
Then why are you talking? See, this is the whole point. I mean, isn't the whole point of conversing with other people to give them good advice, not shitty advice? I mean, you don't walk up to somebody and say, I'm going to talk to you now about a subject. I'm talking completely out of my ass. I think Donald Trump is cool. He's got that really wacky hair thing going. And yeah, he's a little bit fat and tubby, and he's a little bit dumb and stupid. But oh, he's so cool. You know, because he's orange. Orange is such a cool color. I mean, I should spread that opinion. I don't know anything about him. I have no knowledge of all of his history from 1974 on, where he was just a buffoon forever. But I'll just pretend he's a great man, like Giuliani. I mean, what a great man. We would never had the vagina diaries in our vocabulary if it wasn't for good old Giuliani. I mean, what a brilliant success story the man is. It's not like he failed at everything he did. Just I don't know what to say. So yes, but we're not supposed to be rational anymore. We're just supposed to pretend that every opinion is a great opinion, which is absolute nonsense. People have theories based on no evidence. They're out there. They don't care what the evidence is. They want to believe something. And so fuck this. Fuck the experiments. They're not important. And you think we should listen to them. Flat Earth. I mean, compared to you guys, they're really professional, stupid liars. So I mean, frankly, if you're gonna listen to somebody, you might as well listen to them than these creationist kooks. It's just so bad. So knowing they are right and everyone else is wrong, I don't think you should really opine on a subject unless you've done your research, you've developed a solid understanding of how it works. I'll talk about economics. I talk about lots of subjects. And I actually have to think about it. I have to write diagrams and models, and I have to think about, well, how does the money move through the economy, and blah, 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 blah. Where does it get stuck? Oh, yeah, that's right, it gets stuck in the rich man's pockets. You know, you have to model this shit to know how it works. You want to understand how the Fed works? Well, then you're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to understand, oh, okay, so it's basically the reserve bank for the banks. So they all put their money in the bank, and then the Federal Reserve transfers the checks back and forth. So if you write a check to one bank, it goes into the Fed, and that check is exchanged with the other bank. And so all the exchanges are done in the Federal Reserve. You know, you have to do some research. You have to know something about the damn subject. You just all want to talk out of your asses. Okay, you got nothing to back up what you're saying. You just say something like the Dunel effect. There, I've solved charge. That explains attraction and repulsion. It doesn't explain shit.
We don't think so because we're still working on it. But if you ask me, I guess the wall says, "Hey, Dave, is your dad and your?"
So yeah, so he pretends he doesn't think he's right, and yet, you know, he claims he's right. He just keeps saying, "Well, our theory." So just count how many times in this video he says, our theory, our theory, our theory, especially in the last half. So he clearly is asserting that he has onto something, you know. So this claim that you're not supposed to think you're right, of course you're supposed to think you're right. You're not supposed to say anything if you don't think you're right. Then you're just being a fucking heckler or a troll. If you don't know what you're talking about, then you should keep your fucking mouth shut.
Theory, the correct one? No. It's a good one, it's pretty good.
Oh, so it's pretty good, but it's not correct. But I'll judge what's pretty good. Einstein was an asshole and an idiot, but I'm pretty good. And the standard should be what? Again, I can point out what Einstein did wrong in the sense that, well, all he did was duplicate the inverse square law and create a three-dimensional little image so people could see the inverse square law. But frankly, he didn't explain why light bulbs are doing the same thing as his bent space. And why it doesn't make much sense to say, well, photons aren't bent space, but gravity's bent space, even though they're doing exactly the same thing by exactly the same rules. Straight line force, symmetrical straight line force. So, I mean, why didn't he say light bulbs are bent space? Oh, that's right, because it would be stupid.
Was the correct one? No. Could another theory that we know about today end up being the correct one? Yeah.
So he concedes there's a correct one out there. And yet in the next line here, I say there's not one truth. So there's a thing called correct, but it's not ever really correct. I mean, this you know, again, this is just so wave-particle duality. There's truth, but there's no truth. There's correct, but there's no correct. I mean, it's just horse shit. It's just gibberish. It's just a bunch of talk. Talk, talk, talk. No substance at all. No rational. Start with this elemental idea that, okay, there's a thing here to be described, like a dog. The dog has real properties, it has real functions, they can be described, okay, it has a little wet tongue, and it has eyeballs, and it has a nose, and it has certain functions, and we can describe those functions, and there's a correct answer and an incorrect answer. Okay, there's a little man inside of his brain with levers, and he's making the dog move. You know, that would be an incorrect theory because there's absolutely no evidence for it.
So this whole attitude of no, you are right and everyone else is wrong.
Yeah, there's a correct answer. That's right. And my theory actually does the things you claim. See, you just make claims. I draw proofs. I demonstrate how a magnet works, but you don't pay attention to anybody else's content, so you can't even figure out that I've already done that. The only videos you watch of mine are the one where I'm talking about you. That's how fully yourself you are, and how much you don't give a shit about the actual arguments that underlie my dissidence and my opposition to you. Because yes, you claim the particle model. You know, you don't have the particle model. You have a particle model, and frankly, you haven't even recognized the 350-year-old particle model of Fadio that was to convert into Lesage, and you haven't even answered the questions he needed to answer. You've evaded the subject entirely. Oh, drag. Well, so what? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Not good enough. Not even close to good enough.
It's not that I will not support what you're doing. It's that you're shooting yourself in the head. The other one is...
No, what shoots us all in the head is the fact that there's only two agendas here. The first agenda is to point out through good arguments, solid arguments, that conventional physics has jumped the evidence. That they've jumped past the evidence to extreme, they're proposing extraordinary explanations, and they're not even giving us ordinary evidence. That's a huge flaw in the foundation of conventional physics. Okay, is that they have constructed lots of bricks in their building, and the bricks are just theoretical. They're just made up. They have no real substance behind them. They're not really well cemented with evidence and even good reasoning. The reasoning even on its face is kind of nutty. The single photon goes through two slits and splits into a wave function and then does some calculus and then lands somewhere. I mean, it doesn't make any sense on its face. So yes, that's one critique. And then the other responsibility we have, if we're going to say they're wrong, we have to come up with a theory that has more evidence than they have, that's more consistent with the existing experiments and evidence. You can't just say any wacky crap will do. Oh, I think there's solitons that are vibrating like this, like jellyfish, and the jellyfish are swirling around the magnet, and all their tentacles get tied together, and that creates a big giant mess that everything tries to avoid, and that's why it's repulsion. Because everything else says, I'm not going anywhere near that big gnarly mess. That's my theory. And why should anybody say anything other than, well, that's just horseshit. You just made that crap up. Where's your evidence that anything like that's happening?
Is sounding sort of religious-like and less scientific,
Yes, and he's doing this when he's supporting a group that's full of creationists. So, I mean, just an amazing hypocrisy. You're the people with the bad motivations.
Vocabulary, speak, lingo, that kind of thing. I know that I'm not going to name people, but I want you to...
I'm not going to name people because I'm a pussy. What the fuck is that even? That shit. I'm not going to name people. Oh, sure, I'll name Einstein. I'll name deGrasse Tyson. I'll name all these other guys and talk shit about them. But I won't name these people and these dissidents or these people I think are doing it wrong or somehow have crossed some kind of etiquette line. What a pile of crap.
Is to watch these different groups, different individuals, and look for that. I mean, when my father's talking about stuff, you don't hear him talking about it in some mystical way, in some...
Yeah, I see him evading all of the subjects that he really has to pay attention to. So I see him evading charge, which is the most significant event in the universe, is the power of charge. The power of attraction and repulsion. And he's just pretending it doesn't exist. I see him evading the drag subject, just saying, well, the speed of light is really fast, so therefore... the relative speeds are so different that it doesn't matter. But we know that there are objects in space going very fast, and they would be subject to huge amounts of drag.
Way that you're actually worshiping as you talk about it. You talk about it in a sort of awe. You're talking about something bigger, like you found Nirvana or something.
Yeah, well, I think if you find the Holy Grail, you should be a little bit, hey, I found the Holy Grail. Look, it's really cool. It's all shiny and shit. It's really cool. I found it. Yeah, if you find the unification of physics theory, then you should say, hey, this is really cool. Look at that. Look at this fucking thing. What are you talking about? Why shouldn't I be impressed if I found it? I don't understand. See, you're saying I should think my theory sucks when you can't provide a single fucking argument describing why it sucks, what it's missing. Except, oh, it's not infinite. Well, you can't have a theory that's not infinite. Well, what's your evidence for that? What do you base that on except your own bias? So he says he's unbiased, yet he's hugely bigoted. He thinks any truth description has to have a Horton hears a who bullshit in it. That the universe just goes, oh yeah, well, it's Horton hears a who all the way down. Bullshit.
And so that's another thing that I would say some grand mistakes that dissidents have. Of course, mainstream.
The grand mistake is they're just a bunch of nutters. They're a bunch of religious kooks, poorly motivated. They all want either a spiritual answer or a spiritual answer. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's either fractals or some other wooey little girly crap. I mean, it's just girly crap, frankly. So yeah, I don't know what to say. There's none of them are doing hard physics in the sense of none of them are theories that have anything to do with the fact that this is a mechanical universe and we're basically all just fucking robots. None of them are arguing for anything that isn't full of wavy jellyfish shit. Swirling jellyfish.
Has these same problems too, but I'm not interested in them right now. Just talking about we dissidents. The other thing is that is done is those that say there is only one truth. I've heard that by a number of people. One maybe more specifically than other.
Yeah, yeah. So he means me. Yeah, I don't. How? I mean, I'm almost like, no, the world can't be this fucking stupid. I mean, I actually have to explain to people that a dog isn't a cat. I have to explain them that the Earth is spherical, not square. I have to say that there are definable and actual true statements that can be stated about things. They're actual facts and they're undeniable. They cannot be reasonably disputed. I mean, it's amazing nonsense. Yes, there's only one truth. There's only one accurate way to really describe something. I mean, yes, you could change a couple of words. You could say it's, you know, I don't know, large instead of big. You know, you could use some inexact language, but I'm just saying technically the gist of what you're saying, there's an accurate description and inaccurate description. To describe dog as cat would be inaccurate. Clearly.
People or groups, and that is the universe has one truth, and we must go. We will discover it.
Yeah, that should be the ambition. I just don't understand. Why are you looking under the microscope, or why are you looking in the telescope if you're saying I don't want to know the one truth? I don't want to know what it really is. You know, a photograph of the Empire State Building. I want to pretend it's the Eiffel Tower. What are you talking about? Yes, the more information you collect, the more exact your impression, the more exact your description. It's one thing. It's not a bunch of different things. It's not the Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower at the same time. There are none of these stupid, idiotic dualities. This is mush. What the hell are you saying? How could you type this word? Those that say there is only one truth. There's only one reality to be accurately described. And if that's not your ambition, then your then your intent is anti my intent. My intent is to describe the truth. My intent is to defend the truth. What the fuck is your intent?
Rules we will discover. And once we discover those rules, it's right, everybody else is wrong, that's it.
Yes, that's the way it works. It either is a particle or it is a fucking wave. Okay, there's no doubt about that. It either is bent space or it's not bent space. I mean, these are just truths. Fuck, it's not both. It's not three different things. It's not jellyfish, dogs, and cats.
And, you know, that's just not the way to look at it. Because when you say...
Yeah, no, it's exactly the way to look at it. And that's all. And we have this ton of evidence, okay? We're modern man. We have all these tools, all this instrumentality. We have all this tons and tons and tons of evidence. And we really should be able to say something rational about reality. Instead of talking about entanglement, bent space, interference bullshit. I mean, all this 100 wooey particles that don't do anything in reality, that only exist for a millisecond in a fucking accelerator. Yeah, it seems to me we're way off the damn subject.
There's only one truth. What that means is if somebody comes with a better model and you don't agree with it, well...
So we never come to the end of this stupid model search. We never come to the end of figuring out the difference between a dog and a cat, a penis and a vagina. No, we have to stay for all of history, for all of the future. We'll always have to stay somehow confused. We just can't tell the difference between penises and vaginas. No, too complicated. Can't do it. We'll never have the right answer. We'll never figure it out. Yeah, I think we can figure it out. There were people who were malicious axe murderers. We had trials for them. There was a ton of evidence. We properly convicted them and killed them. That happened. All right? It was a fact. They even confessed, many of them. Okay? So that just verified that, oh, yeah, we got the right man. That happens. Okay? We don't sit here forever saying, oh, what's a mystery? We don't know who did it. Yeah, sometimes we do know.
Whose truth is right. So if you have this attitude, I'm just telling all my subscribers, if you want to be science woke, if you want to be a critical thinker, you have to be...
You have to be brain dead, because you can't do the basic logic to figure out that, oh yeah, it either is a particle or it's a wave. It either is bent space or it's a force. Yeah, I can figure that out.
Get this notion that there's not one truth. There can be...
Yeah, there is. There's one truth. There's one factual description. There's a set of facts. There's a reality. There is a thing, and it has properties. You either accurately describe it or you inaccurately describe it. That's your choice.
Consensus of what we think is the best of something. That we can do. That's all we can do, really.
What a pile of crap. Again, consensus means nothing, because we know consensus is God is, Jesus was Lord, and the consensus in Mohammed land is some other bozo, some child molester is the perfect human. This is just such a pile of crap. Consensus means nothing. Evidence means something. A rational argument means something. And people have to have the capacity to reason. They have to have the capacity to follow facts. Facts combine and they point in directions. They point to the next fact. That's the way logic works. You compile facts and you see where the facts point. That's what we're looking for. And if you're looking for something else, you're not doing logic and you're not going to get to the truth.
So if you hear people saying, hey, there's only one truth and I found it, or there's only one truth and I'm trying to find it, and that means the idea that you could have 6 different models of the universe and they could live in harmony, that's ludicrous. It's not ludicrous, but...
Yeah, it is ludicrous. Go ahead. Give me the example of the models that can live in harmony. Go ahead. Give me 2 models, 3 models that can live in harmony. Show me 3 different people with a stupid fucking model and tell me how those 3 models live in harmony when they have exactly contradictory statements in them. I mean, this is just such mush as an argument. It's just so fucking mushy. How do you spew mush like this? Selling mush like this? Garbage. This is breaking people's reasoning skills.
This is when we get into talking about philosophy of science, not philosophy. And then
no, there's no philosophy of science. There's science. Philosophy is a subcategory of science. There's only one thing. There's facts and logic. That's all there is. You either do that, you either have respect for facts and you have respect for where they point, or you're an asshole.
My 4th bullet point, I said, those that spend time tearing down others working outside the mainstream. That is...
Right, let's have a double standard. So we'll insult Einstein, draw funny pictures of him, do this. Ken Wheeler, a guy you defend in this fucking idiotic video, just constantly calls anybody who disagrees with him a knuckle dragger. All right? He has nothing but insults he spews. I mean, get a clue. See, you pay so little attention to any of this stuff. You don't know how any of this goes, how all this community that you're sitting there running, and you don't know what the players are up to at all. And yet you're critiquing. So, yeah, fuck the facts. I'll just talk out of my ass.
What good does that do? The only time...
It does exactly the same good that it does for you to say conventional physics is wrong, that it jumped the evidence. Well, when a dissident science is doing exactly the same thing, when he's jumping the evidence, or worse, like your Bill guy, just making up evidence, just keep citing bizarre stories of conspiracies and the hidden truths and all this other nonsense, all this wooey crap that he just made up in his own delusional head. Yeah, you should point it out that, yeah, well, that isn't science. Science isn't claiming, oh, the great mysteries of life have been hidden in some vault at the library. All the secret books that they're not letting us see. That's conspiracy nutter cooker crap.
time you do that normally is when you're threatened. And the threat doesn't necessarily come because...
So I guess you were threatened by Einstein then. You're threatened by Hawking's, and you're threatened by deGrasse Tyson. So that's why you have to insult them. What a pile of fucking shit. Again, more shit. Spewed by a hypocrite. A fucking hypocrite. I will insult you. I will imply. I will cast aspersions to anywhere I want. Okay, but nobody touch me. Nobody throw it back in my face. What a hypocrite.
The person you're talking about in your video and tearing down is the...
I'm tearing down your arguments, jackass. You can't tell the difference, okay? That's the whole problem. I waste my time playing your video. I waste my time... Okay, let's consider this stupid small Earth argument. What's the first thing that comes into my mind? Well, small Earth, what does that do to the atmosphere if there's half the gravity? I don't know a hell of a lot about all that chemistry, but I kind of have this idea that the gravity is what's keeping the atmosphere dense and thick, and so yeah, there won't be as much atmosphere then, so what are people going to breathe? I'm arguing your argument, shithead, and the reason why I'm getting pissed off is because you're not paying any attention. You haven't... Again, you haven't even glanced at my theory, and yet you have some opinion. It's just such crap.
Is that their arguments threaten your model? From most of the people...
Yeah, again, it's the exact opposite, okay? It's you're the one, you're pretentious douche who claims you have some sort of the particle theory, and it's so incomplete and so superficial. Again, you haven't even dealt with the Lesage gravity page. Go read the Lesage gravity page and deal with the objections written right there. Start there. You haven't even done step 1 of defending your theory.
Online, who are those people who tear down and diss other people.
So again, he's sitting there, makes a movie called Einstein Wrong. So nobody's allowed to say Dissident Science wrong. So if I make a movie called Dissident Science Wrong, I've committed a crime of somehow. And all I do in my video called Dissident Science Wrong is point out how, gee, this stupid small Earth thing is just as dumb as flat Earth because it's so easy to sit there and poke holes in it because it doesn't make any damn sense. You know, how'd the moon got bigger at the same rate or something, but somehow it has to change its velocity, and so none of this is going to make any sense.
Videos out there doing that to me. I don't care. Actually, they bring more people to me because people come in and go, hey, he's not that way. I kind of like that. Dave's pretty cool.
Yeah, so show me the cool person saying Dave is pretty cool, right? Because this guy couldn't be much nerdier than he is. So I'm just saying, yes, the rejects that have flown to your channel are exactly the kind of nutters that nobody needs. They're just truther kookers who are flat earthers, Ken Wheelerites, electric universe kooks, okay, who don't understand anything really. They don't understand anything about how photons work or electrons work. So again, they're just as they have just as a limited understanding of reality as conventional physics.
So I've actually, when those videos come out, it's really strange. My subscribers were, for me, going through the roof. I mean, I usually get 2 or 3 a day, and they were going up to 5, 6, 10.
Wow, yeah, that's through the roof. You're way on your way. You know, just another 1,000,000 years, and you know you'll finally hit 100,000.
You know, a day for a little period. I was wondering what's going on, and find out that somebody was like lambasting me, and they were coming like, oh.
Again, I have no interest in lambasting you, as I made clear in most of these videos. I like you, generally speaking, but what you're saying is horseshit. I mean, somebody writes it right there. Those that say there's only one truth. I mean, that is just so obnoxious a statement to me. I mean, I guess you just don't understand how. That's just saying, what the fuck is that saying? I can't tell the difference between a dog and a cat? Yeah, I can. And I certainly can tell the difference between a dog and a jellyfish.
I'll describe this kind of bad. But if you're spending time paring others' work down, it's really out of fear. And that fear usually...
Yeah, bullshit. It's out of grotesque, obnoxious revulsion. I find this revolting that this is what... You're ruining dissidence Okay, the objective is to make the conventional physics, to expose them, to show that the emperor's not wearing any clothes. And you people can't be more naked than you are. There's just no way. You're just so frickin' naked. So what's the point? You're not arguing from evidence. You're just arguing from your own bias. Your evidence sucks. Your arguments have no continuity. They don't make any frickin' sense. Oh, we have G1 particles, then we have G2, and then G3s, and they're going to speed of light squared, and you're just making this shit up. Where's your evidence that any of that shit exists? Oh, that's right, there is none.
It comes without your, when the people do that, it comes from the fact that they look at something, they make some superficial judgment on it, and then try.
So again, this is again, a huge irony. He has listened to nothing. I've listened to every one of them. I've listened to Ken Wheeler. I've watched Fractal Girl thingy video woman. I watched the Science guy, the Science Al or whatever his name was. I've watched all this shit. I'm the one that did the research on the Ferro-cell. I'm the one looking for the truth here. I'm the one sitting there giving the people a shot. I've listened to 90% of your father's videos. I understand your theory. You don't understand shit about mine. You're the one with the double standards here with the superficial commentary. Nobody else has done what we've done. No, I've done a lot more than you've done.
To argue against it, that's anything that may tear down your idea. And that's the wrong way to go about science. I mean, it doesn't even really matter.
No, the wrong way to go about science is to have a mantra of there's many truths. Let's find the many, many, many truths, the many verses. That's the wrong way to do science.
About whether or not that person's right or you're right or they're wrong. It's just not the way to go about it. I mean,
yeah, that's the way it works, though. You either are describing the cat right or you're describing the cat wrong. And when you're doing it wrong, you should be corrected and pointed out. No, you're heading the wrong way. You're jumping the evidence again. You're doing exactly what they're doing. Exactly what I'm saying to you is exactly what somebody should do. If you're sitting there and jumping the evidence, I'm saying go watch my magnetism video I made just, 3 days ago. And explain how one piece of that explanation of how a magnet works could be wrong. Explain why. One piece of evidence that's ever been seen in the history of humankind that would in some way demonstrate that there's some flaw in that diagram in terms of fitting the evidence. Show me. Show me. You weak ass. Before you tell me I'm critiquing without any counter argument. I have the counter argument. I have the better theory.
I always look at everything, including Ken Wheeler stuff. I see it as a chance.
No, you didn't watch any of Ken Wheeler's stuff. So he says including Ken Wheeler's stuff. He had to be dragged to Ken Wheeler's videos. He's heard the name for months, maybe a year. He's paid no attention whatsoever. He's had to be dragged to the videos, and now he's only watched a tiny fraction of Ken Wheeler's gibberish.
Chance for people, and myself and others, to see the world a different way that maybe inspire me from what I'm working on.
So again, more mushy silver lining shit. If I listen to complete nonsense, bibble babble, I could listen to a baby going goo goo gaga blah 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 blah, and oh yeah, that blah blah is kind of a cool word. I think I make a song. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, oh great. Oh, I've been inspired by the blah blah. No, that's just bullshit. That's not how you do science. Listening to babies go blah blah is not how you do science.
Or whatever, or to discover new directions, new connections in my brain about the universe. So tearing other people's work down by saying this is bad. So they're tearing about the work, but then of course,
yes, tearing down truthers. Okay, I mean conspiracy nutters, flat earthers, whatever, solitoners, ether writers, hyperburloiders. I mean, again, there's still these simple arguments. I mean, 90% of these people keep arguing that somehow magnets have all this shit swirling around them. And nobody has any explanation for why we don't have a single experiment demonstrating anything ever being spontaneously moved by a magnet. Ever. Like you just sit the magnet there and shit'll spin around it all by itself. Ever. No experiment demonstrates that ever. No matter how light a thing I put there, it's not going to just say, oh yeah, I have to do this swirly thing. No, it ain't going to happen. And yet I have to somehow argue. Why are you people all believing this when there's not one single shred of evidence that anything's going out one end and going in the other end? No evidence whatsoever. Zero evidence.
The last one's just name calling. I mean, you know, when I talk about the mainstream and they're talking, and they have these articles come out because I'm on vacation, I'm putting out more video.
Right. You mock them. You mock the intelligence. You mock the reasoning. You mock. You do exactly what I'm doing, which is saying that ain't right, or that ain't right. That's projecting. That's assumption without evidence. That's just something you pulled out of your ass. So yes, again, you're allowed to do it, but nobody else is. You're the only one allowed to critique. You're the only one allowed to find fault. Nobody else is.
So I already got some videos lined up. I just haven't recorded them. I've got all my notes there. But you know, I take some of these mainstream articles thinking, oh my gosh, maybe we made a breakthrough in something. And these guys are literally talking about stuff that are so far out that if you have any type of engineering or critical thinking or your science will open.
Right. If you have any kind of reasoning skills, when somebody says something extraordinary, like the Earth was half its size, and but there was life on it, the same life that we're evolved from. So the DNA molecule, all the tension in the atoms, all the rest of the stuff that would be implicated by this half-gravity thing happening, somehow, but, you know, we have bugs in ember from 500 million years ago, 350 million years anyway. Exactly the same. We've got cockroaches in the ember, you know, 350 million years old. Same cockroaches that are living today. How could that be? You know, if the Earth radically changed.
Anyway, these people are off the rocker, and I'm not calling them idiots. I'm not calling them, you know, insane. Most of the time,
how does the Earth make water and oil?
I say they must do a lot of mushrooms or something. They must do some, maybe drugs. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm going to say to you when you just do this wooey shit. This stupid fucking swirly crap in water somehow explains charge. This whatever, if it's swirling this way, then they attract, and if it's swirling this way, then they repel, even though it's the weakest damn force you could possibly imagine, and the amount of energy that you have to create the tiny amount of attraction or the tiny amount of repulsion, the ratio is 1,000,000 to 1. So you have to have 1,000,000 times more swirly energy to create 1 unit of attraction energy. And that somehow, in your understanding, explains why two magnets smash into each other or two magnets fly off of each other. That crap.
Why? Because I can't see how lucid people are believing what comes out of their mouth. And then
yeah, I can't see how anybody rational can just accept your jargon and say, okay, he's mentioned that new guy, so that must answer the question. No, it doesn't answer the question.
Write it down and then they publish it. But you never hear me calling them idiots. You know.
All right, so now we have a standard. So anytime I hear you call them what, moron? Is that what you're going to say? Oh, I call them morons, but I don't call them idiots. I'll say it's moronic, but I won't say they're morons. There, that's a cool distinction, isn't it? Well, okay, your theory's idiotic. You're not an idiot, but your theory's idiotic.
The people I actually get really upset with are the science evangelists, especially Neil deGrasse Tyson. Those guys, he sort of backed off, but these guys are, you know, egomaniacs, and that's when, you know, they get closer calling me, but I don't. I'm just, you know, there's no reason to, but people do. You hear name calling. I'm going to show you, you know, name calling on the. They're in their titles. Go search for dissident and something, and you're going to see people, you know, they do it with me as well. Okay, slide 1.
Yeah, what was the brutal title? Dissident Science is a dumb or something? I don't even think I said that. So, yeah, what am I going to find? Draft Science versus Dissident Science or Hypocrite Science. That's it. I called you a hypocrite. Oh, my God. What a horrible direct accusation to make when it's completely true. You're a hypocrite. I can prove it.
All right, slide 2. Consensus is last, not first. Now, I did a video, actually. If you look at, like, consensus is... no, I'm going to say it without me knowing it. Consensus is wrong, I think, is if you look up, let's see, consensus.
Well, whatever. This isn't about consensus. It's about submission. Everybody has to submit to the Bible. You're not allowed to go outside the realm of the Christian. Like, you can be a Methodist, you can be a Protestant, but you can't go too far away. You can't, you know, you can't take Jesus's you know, you can't deny the resurrection or something. And once you do that, then you're a, you know, a heathen.
Is wrong. Let's see if you come up with my videos come up here. Yeah, there it comes up. Wow, actually, there's quite a few of them. I mean,
guess what? It comes up because you're not in a private window, and Google already knows who you are, and it put it there on purpose just to give you the false impression that your crap is relevant when it's completely irrelevant.
I did this in 2012 in Albuquerque. It's definitely worth looking at. My gosh, I got 15, I got almost 1,000 views of this. I think it was on there actually before I had to move it, but I'll show you this. Let's see here. There we go. MPA Natural Philosophy Alliance 19th Annual Conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This was on August 12th, 2012. That's Greg Volk. And it was a really interesting talk, in fact, for our channel. This was, we didn't really have any editing, we just had one camera. And I talked about this. Got a lot of comments, and a lot of people...
yeah, I'm sure those are all real thumbs up, right? Like you didn't spike that with 12 extra ones, did you?
Who linked to it. But it's something that I've talked about anyways. So consensus, take a look at that. Oh, there's the title. You can see that now. Consensus in science is wrong.
Right, we shouldn't, once we figure out the difference between a dog and a cat, we shouldn't agree, yeah, dogs and cats are different. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Consensus about what? There should be consensus on things. There's one sun, okay, in our solar system. Yeah, we should all be able to agree, okay, yeah, there's one sun. Shouldn't we?
So, you know me, I'm just like a rebel rouser. But regardless, mainstream looks for consensus. In fact, Wikipedia is the sad case, the best example of that. And anytime you try to put any alternative ideas in physics there, you're immediately labeled pseudoscience. They should label it as, you know, new models or new ideas.
Yeah, right. But you people exactly keep saying, okay, don't call me a tinfoil hatter, and then you put the tinfoil hat on. I mean, if you were showing, if your claims weren't way above the evidence you provide, then, you know, you'd have some kind of argument. But why don't you give the example of the dissident science that isn't doing exactly the same thing conventional physics is doing, which is jumping the evidence, just way ahead of any evidence they can support it with. So why don't you show me the theory that's solid?
Or alternative models. They should not be labeled negatively, but they do. So mainstream look for science, and they should say they look for consensus and dissidence and say it's non-existent. Its non-existence is reason to dismiss them. If you watch my video that I just showed you, I do talk about this. Basically, they use this and say, look, if you guys have a better model, everybody should be supporting it because you found a better model. If you have 1,000 people with 1,000 models, you haven't found anything and you're all lost.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if you just have a bunch of everybody just making up shit, then that's all you have is shit. A bunch of different versions of shit. And you're not going to replace a big pile of shit with a little pile of shit. What's the difference? There's no advantage. Why should I go with the dissident shit when it's just as smelly as the conventional shit? You have to up the game. And you're going way below the game, okay? When you start saying extraordinary things and you have nothing as evidence, almost nothing as evidence.
Well, that's what they'll say.
I mean, you know, when you're going to claim the Earth was half the size and had half the gravity, again, it's an extraordinary claim. And what do you have as evidence? Oh, well, you know, this model allows the outside of the planets to also fit together, so... you know, that proves that the Earth was small. No, it doesn't prove it. It's an interesting piece of evidence, but it's proof of nothing. I mean, it's by itself, it means nothing. Let's say dinosaurs were big, too big. Well, you say they're too big, but you don't give any real hard facts as to how you prove they were too big. That somehow they couldn't move because they're too big. When I would say is an obvious fact, they look like they're built like elephants. They're built even more dull than an elephant. I mean, they're even less agile looking. So, I mean, it seems kind of consistent that these are monstrously big organisms built like monstrously big organisms would be built. It seems perfectly consistent. that they weren't jumping around like kangaroos.
So they think that consensus in science is important. They use it for themselves.
Well, Tyrannosaurus Rex, I mean, that's pretty kangaroo-y. But again, gigantic frickin' legs. Its legs are half, a third of its body mass is its frickin' legs.
And they use it to bully people, and they use it against we dissidents by saying, oh, you know, we don't agree on anything, we have 1,000 different ideas. Consensus comes through the cooperation and understanding of everybody's point of view.
No, what this whole thing has to be done is broken down into subjects, and you have to take the subjects individually, and there's a whole bunch of you know, this is science, it's physics, it's a little bit, everything's a little bit complicated because it's little stuff we can't see, and you have to do a lot of deductive reasoning, okay, and so I can make all these arguments about, okay, well, let's understand what gravity is, and so, yeah, Einstein came up with an idea. Well, what's the real evidence for that idea? I mean, a very convoluted formula that somehow accounts for Mercury getting a tiny little push in its orbit. A tiny little push. Is it a push or a slowdown? I don't know which one it is. Well, anyway, it slows down or it speeds up tiny bit. And yes, it's close to the sun, and the other planets are further away, and so the effect is less with the other planets, which makes perfectly good sense. And so there's lots of ways you can sit there and say, well, maybe solar flares are doing it, or maybe this is doing it, maybe that's doing it. And then you could make the whole argument about, well, let's just take his little formula and throw that in the garbage for a moment. And let's just look at the idea itself. What are we talking about? What is bent space? Oh, it's just an illustration of the inverse square law. The inverse square law does exactly the same thing, okay? Straight line force coming into something would do exactly the same thing. A light bulb is doing the same thing in reverse, okay? The little photons are spreading this way and this way at the same time. So they're little rays, and as the rays go out, they get further apart in two directions. That's the inverse square law. There's nothing magical about what Einstein's proposing here, and we see it in all these other things. So why would we conclude that space is bent to do the inverse square law when we know we don't have to bend space to make a light bulb? I mean, you can make the rational arguments, but each subject requires a bit of depth. And as I've done, you have to illustrate it. You know, you keep talking about drawing pictures. Where did you draw a picture of a magnet attracting? Where did you draw a picture of a magnet repelling?
So consensus does happen and will happen in some sense. People will gravitate to better ideas and things that work, and we have those things.
Oh, yeah, we have no evidence that happens either, right? We're still blighted by religion. Most of the world is a religious nutter. Clearly, bad ideas don't die. So he says right there that bad ideas die. They don't die. They linger and linger and linger. Well, it's going to say it in the next slide.
In the CMPS, but it only happens when you get together and cooperate. And that's why we have like our conferences and those things and our proceedings to get together.
Yeah, which are just church meetings.
Together. And do exactly that. So let me go here before I keep going here. Religion, like,
pile of shit, pile of shit, pile of shit, pile of shit. Let's examine piles of shit. Call it a fun day.
We only progress when we discover mistakes and know what is not correct. That's erratic. True, but unfortunately...
unfortunately, he doesn't read the comments, and he doesn't show the comments, so you have no idea what the person actually said. So what's the point?
We say that all the time, but we do it very little, especially when it comes to our own ideas. If I've noticed with people who even don't have their own ideas, they say, I subscribe, like Lisa. Lisa's not here tonight. She's probably busy. She's usually here. She says, I sort of subscribe to
making a bowl of mush. I mean, all this mush that somehow, again, people should have conversations from ill-informed, uncertain, confused perspectives. I should go find confused people to talk to. No.
Universe, I said, and my answer to that, Lisa, it would be, don't subscribe. Just say, I'm maybe leaning toward it, but you have to understand what...
Again, who cares what the Lisas of the world think? Again, this argument has to be among people who actually have some knowledge of the subject. I mean, converting somebody to say, I agree with you, Gary. From my completely ignorant perspective, I think you are right. What's the point of that? It's of no value. We have to create an obligation for anybody who's going to talk crap about reality to sit there and face each other. We have to face each other's criticisms. We have to face each other's counter arguments. We all have to put our theory to trial. We have to go to the trial and present the evidence, and the jury has to watch it and say, well, that was the biggest pile of crap, or that was really compelling. But that's what has to happen here. We have to put all of these theories on trial. And the jury can't be full of morons who don't know what DNA is, and they don't know what up is, and they don't know what down is, and they don't know what thin is, and they don't know what fat is. What's the fucking point of that? Oh, let's convince the jury of imbeciles. That's useless. You can't do physics on the cheap. Well, you can do it cheap, but you can't do it without it. You're going to, if you want to understand, you're going to have to invest some time. There's lots to the subject, lots of pieces to be put together.
The problem today is now that we have the internet.
It's like if you want to understand a dog, it has lots of organs, it has liver, kidneys, this, that, this, little spikes on its penis, it has lots of stuff. Okay, you can't just sit there and say, I'm just going to sit there and just say it's dog, furry dog, and say, there, I've done science.
You can't just, if you learn about one and you like it, that's great, but then you hear about others, you've got to keep watching everything that comes up. When Ken Wheeler, when I saw his stuff, I've never seen it before. It comes.
Yeah, I've seen his stuff, but I haven't seen it before. So it's just in his own sentences, or even dualities in his own sentence. I haven't watched any of it before, but I watched it.
So take a look at it. Maybe this guy has discovered. I always think, well, maybe somebody has that it, because even though I'm working with an it with my father. Ken Wheeler gets inspiration.
So if anybody spent as much time as you spend analyzing other people's theories, analyzing your father's theories, they couldn't possibly have a reasonable judgment. They couldn't make a judgment. 5-10 minutes, you're not gonna understand shit. It's not gonna work. You can't judge something that way, a physics theory. But you can judge it in the sense, as soon as somebody says something stupid, makes an extraordinary claim, says, well, there's just this flow of the flowing hyperboloid, then you can say, okay, we're sort of done. If that's to you good enough evidence, I'll just make up a hyperboloid. I won't explain where it comes from or how it got there.
Tesla, who got inspiration from Blashkovich, who got inspiration from the Greeks, yes. Even if found a huge issue with plan that highlight issue in huge amount of field of physics.
Voskulich got if that's the other guy, he got his inspiration from the Torah. He didn't get his from the Greeks. Pile of crap.
Science, he'll get ignored because he doesn't supply a model. Could be. All right, just making sure I keep up with you guys. I appreciate it. So that's about consensus. I got just 2 more slides, and here's what my conclusion is, and this includes everybody who's doing a YouTube channel. Ken Wheeler included, all the other people included, my father, Jeff Yee, everybody, Electric Universe, and they don't all do this. And I am not, first of all, for anybody to take on mainstream and be public about it, I have too much respect for that part of it to get mad. I get frustrated more than anything, and I think those people who do unite are the ones. It's a fact.
So again, he's saying, okay, it's great that you're arguing with conventional physics, and it doesn't matter whether you make a really horrible argument. Of course it matters. So that this is like in politics. You mean if somebody makes a really stupid, bigoted argument for a particular thing, for some principle, but they're arguing for it so badly it doesn't humiliate you, and you're just like, oh crap, I mean, that guy's on my side, that idiot is on my side? Shit. That doesn't bug the fuck out of you? Well, frankly, that's what I see. When I see Dissident Science, all I'm seeing is a bunch of people making really bad arguments. They're just humiliating the opposition. They're just making all the dissidents look like tinfoil hat kooks. Because they're just saying kooky shit. Free energy, hyperboloids, blah, 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 blah. It's all mush.
Those people who do unite are the ones who are going to push science forward. Doing it in isolation and coming up with it like the surfer dude with the 256 dimensions or whatever. Circle.
256 dimensions. Circle. Surfer dude. So now he's maligning a certain class. So you're not allowed to be a surfer dude and do physics. So a surfer dude couldn't possibly watch physics videos and know something about it. But it's okay if you're a creationist religious kook and your only motivation is to smash God into science. That's okay. But surfer dudes? No, not okay. Double standard again. Hypocrisy all over the place. Surfer dude.
Well, whatever he has to unite all the forces and all that stuff. It ain't happening anymore. You've got to...
Yeah, right. You can't unite all the forces. Can't be done. So what? They all move the same speed. That doesn't mean anything. You know.
Really work together. Everybody works together.
Everybody works together. Nobody works together. This is just such a horse shit. No one. Not one of them. Show me the dissident who's working together with somebody. Show me that. Show me one dissident who's working together with somebody. Show me that. Doesn't exist. Just a completely fallacious premise that there's some dissident who thinks, oh yes, that guy's really great. You know, my theory's marginal. His is really great. Show me that.
Not in isolation. Even Einstein, who claimed he didn't know about Michelson and Morley and all.
He didn't do that. That's just a lie right there. I mean, it's right in his papers. He mentions Michelson and Morley in his 1915 paper. It's right there in the paper. He talks about Maxwell. He talks about Michelson Morley. He says the only rational conclusion in the face of this evidence is that it's got to be some other kind of force and blah, 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 blah. You know. It's in his paper. I read that part in his paper. So clearly, I don't know where you heard this denial that he ever heard of Michelson Morley when it's in his 1915 paper.
Come on. He's not that. He knew about it. This idea that you come out of the blue, some genius, some savior. It's just not going to happen.
So again, now he's maligning Einstein again. Some genius, some savior, some blah, 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 blah. Again, so those are rational arguments against Einstein. Einstein never claimed to be that. Einstein never said, I'm the smartest man on the earth. When he was asked by a reporter, well, what's it like being the smartest man on earth? He said, go ask Tesla. Einstein was incredibly intelligent. I mean, his wit was great, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he was wrong, okay? He was wrong about the nuclear bomb, right? A year before they figured out how to cause a chain reaction, he said, you'll never cause a chain reaction. It's like hunting hummingbirds at midnight in Siberia. You'll never be able to shoot a hummingbird. You know, and a year later, somebody did it. So yeah, Einstein was far from perfect. And he didn't claim to be. So that's the joke here. You're maligning him not for what he did, but for what the media did. Einstein never claimed to be anything. He wanted to be, he said, yeah, I'd rather have been a plumber. He said 2 years before he died, I've been studying photons for 50 years. I haven't learned a fucking thing. I haven't improved my knowledge one iota. That's what he said. And now you're insulting him as if he claimed he was the smartest man on earth. No, he didn't. That he was the savior. He didn't claim any of that. He obviously went to his grave pretty unsatisfied with his theory because of its incompleteness.
Mainstream with a fractured community is impossible. It really is. If we do not, well, we'll see. We must support each other's right to challenge the mainstream. We must support that first and foremost. I applaud. So
more than much, like somebody's not supporting people having their right to voice their crappy opinion. And what you have to support is the right for somebody to say that's garbage. Just like you say their theory, the conventional theory, is garbage, people have a right to say to you dissidents, well, where's your evidence? What do you got? That's all you got? You got extraordinary claims and you don't even have ordinary evidence? Yeah, that's garbage. I'm allowed to call it garbage. It's garbage. It's replacing shit with smellier shit.
Ken Wheeler? Absolutely. The guy's got what? A lot of followers. My goodness. How many people he's got?
So again, followers. Yes, he's got a lot of people who don't know shit about physics. Okay? I bet you he doesn't have any physicists, okay, on his charm list. All right? Nobody who knows anything about reasoning and logic and facts, I'm sure none of them are part of that following.
100,000, I don't know, quite a few. How many people are subscribed to him? Yeah, he's got 150,000. You know, he's been around, of course, since 2011, 2012, so that's been 6 years, been around less than 2. But yeah, he has some following, and that's quite...
I mean, I hate to be classist about this or whatever the right, almost fascist, but the argument is really has to be made among people who have enough intelligence to understand the argument. You can't do this on the cheap. You can't be a rocket scientist. You can't be a brain surgeon without some investment. So when you're going to talk about what the right approach is in terms of a certain surgical operation to perform, there's no point in inviting the morons in to opine on the subject. There's no point in saying, well, let's put the two theories of how to do the surgery correct and we'll put up to a public vote and see which one gets voted for. Absolutely no point in doing that. They don't have enough knowledge to be able to judge what's reasonable and what's unreasonable. They're so frickin' stupid.
Quite amazing. So, great for him, but we need to support each other's work. And like I said, people are bashing each other. I'll show you people bashing Ken Wheeler. We must support each other's right.
Yeah, because Ken Wheeler says preposterous things, okay? He says this stupid Ferro-cell, which you can dissect so easily, which, again, he knows. He's shined a single LED on it. He knows how the damn thing works, okay? And he knows it's not bending light. And yet he's claiming it is.
To argue their point. That's one of the things, too, is we don't even let a person argue their point. Even like in global warming, maybe 2/3 of the studies, maybe
Oh, so now he's going to opine on another subject for which he is ignorant. I mean, he thinks oil comes from inside the earth, so he doesn't even understand how it's a carbon sink. And that's why the world got colder, is because there's a bunch of coal and a bunch of oil and a bunch of natural gas and a bunch of methane that's been locked into the crust of the earth. And in the Jurassic, all that shit was free. All right, and the difference between now and 350 million years ago is that. That's the difference, okay? The Earth 300 million years ago didn't have a bunch of oil in the ground. It didn't have a bunch of coal in the ground. Didn't have a bunch of methane frozen in the ground. Shit.
Support the idea, and then 1/3 don't. And some of the ones that support global warming are bad science. Some of the ones that say it's not good is bad science, and vice versa. Some that says
yeah. So you're claiming, you claim. So you know what bad science is. Why don't you point it out then? If you're gonna opine and say that shit, why don't you back it up with some sort of evidence that you somehow know which is the good and the bad science, because you're an expert somehow. Yet you don't know shit about it.
There's not. It's good science as well. We have to debate this out. I'm not here to tell anyone here my stand on global.
Right. We have to debate it out, and yet you're doing a superficial critique for absolutely no point. And there's absolutely no reason for you to be even opining on the subject, because you're acknowledging that you're not at all qualified to have an opinion.
Warming. I go for more destruction of the earth. I don't care. Whatever it is, we're destroying the planet, and that's a fact. And
no, that's retarded. The planet is not destroyable because you changed what the mold looks like growing on the surface of it. The planet is in no danger.
And, we're doing it for not just from our cars, but from even our diets are doing worse. No one talks about that. So I have my own opinions on that. But the idea is we got to let people argue their points. If you're a liberal or a progressive and you say global warming is 99.99% for certain, you're wrong. It's a consensus right now, but nothing.
I'm just saying, if you compile the evidence, I'm just saying there's a ton of evidence that there's this huge connection between sunk carbon and unsunk carbon. And it's sort of obvious that what have we done for the last 100 years? Oh, we've unsunk carbon. Do you really have to do more math than that? I don't think so.
Nothing's ever certain. Nothing's ever proven. We have support for stuff, and the support may show a great support for it. But I'm not here to argue that because it's not my area of specialty, so I don't read about that. But my point is not even that. The point is that we need to support each other's right to argue.
There's no point. That's exactly right. So you're just saying, let's all pretend we're ignorant. Let's pretend there's no evidence and pretend we're all supposed to just make shit up. When I would argue that, no, your obligation is to demonstrate how your statements about things, what is a fact. It's a particle. Well, then you have to explain how the particle works, how it matches all the evidence that exists, and you have to explain any kind of paradoxes or problems it creates. You have to be willing to put it on trial and defend it with an argument. And that's all we have is the arguments. And the quality of people's arguments can be scrutinized. If somebody argues that they're hiding you know, the most important books in human history in vaults in libraries, well, yeah, then we're allowed to say, gee, is this a credible witness? I mean, he's telling us a story for which he has absolutely no evidence, and it's an extraordinary conspiracy theory. Can I judge the credibility of this guy and say, do I want to play this cry wolf bullshit? Do I want to keep listening to him tell me stories that aren't true? Or do I want to just say, yeah, enough of that already? You've blown your chance with me, okay? There's a thing called credibility, and you lose all credibility when you start saying things are true that you haven't demonstrated to be true with any facts.
Their point. Let me argue my point. And when you do, then you listen to other people's, you know, sometimes that's not what even people do. Where you're at a video conference on every Saturday morning. The CMPS has a video conference at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific Time for 2 hours. And a person speaks, and it's a video conference, so everybody has a voice, audio, and you can even have video. It holds up, I don't know, lots of video. So you can have like bunches of video chats. It's infused. Check it out. Just go to naturalphilosophy.org.
Yeah, and totally unproductive because nobody argues what is being discussed. They just argue their own shit. So again, it's the very thing you're saying you have somehow got a control over, which is people thinking they're right and everybody else is wrong, is exactly what happens every Saturday morning. Is one person proposes something and everybody else just says, well, my theory says, and my theory says, and my theory says, and my theory says. So there's no conversation about what the actual evidence points to.
In fact, there's a couple coming up. You can see, I think Lori Gardini is going to be talking on Light tomorrow morning, and also Jeffy's going to be talking about his stuff. I've been trying to get him to do that. And what happens, a lot of people go in there, I don't believe anything this person's saying. I'm going to sit around and in the chat, or I'm going to sit around, and then when it comes my turn, I'm going to tell the person how they're wrong, but then I don't listen to what the person says back to me.
So anyway, I haven't seen that happen. All I've seen is somebody just says something irrational, like the stupid Harry guy. Like, well, what's your motivation? We have a perfectly good, the theory of wacky duality works just fine. Why are you saying duality isn't true? Or some kind of crap like that. No, it's not on the subject, not pointing out why somebody's proposal can't be true, not pointing out where it doesn't fit the evidence. No, just making some wacky statement about, well, what's your motivation? What, you think the conventional theory is wrong? Well, how could you possibly do that?
All I'm doing is going in, poking you, and saying, hey, you're wrong because of this. And then maybe I go into a tirade about how I'm right, and then when someone makes any comment, you don't comment.
Well, again, that doesn't happen. Nobody ever critiques it based on something that actually makes it wrong in the first place, and I don't see this part where nobody responds to it, so that's just horseshit anyway. So he hasn't even watched those. He doesn't even watch the science conference videos.
It's just totally useless. It's absolutely useless. It just annoys everybody. So the idea is, if you cannot listen to someone else's argument that comes back, then you're wrong. If you hear the argument coming back, and the person is just playing the same key on the piano, and that key on the piano in your mind is just off, wrong key, then okay, that's cool. But you got to let that back and forth, and everybody has to listen to the argument, counter-argument, counter-argument, etc.
There can't be any counter-argument because the theories are all so fucking unfounded. There's absolutely no evidence for any of them. They're just wacky ideas. You know, the vibrating jellyfish, or, you know, tickling the cat's belly, and the cat goes meow, and then that scares the dog, and then the dog runs into the proton. I mean, it's just crap.
We must not dismiss something because we have sided with something or someone, or some theory or someone.
No, I'm siding with you have to put a collection of facts together that point. And if you don't have facts that point somewhere, then you got nothing.
Well, I sort of subscribe to the electric universe. Oh, I sort of subscribe to ether. And so, you know, I'm just not... No! Folks, here's what's going to happen. While you're subscribing to ether, some other model's going to be going gangbusters, and you're going to be like,
oh, the gangbuster model's coming any day now. Like the Ken Wheeler full of shit gangbuster hyperburloid toroid bullshit. It's all tornadoes and donuts all over the fucking place. Complete horse shit. Only a moron could see any value in.
Behind. Or if you're subscribed to a particle model like ours, and then someone in the ether world comes up with something that's like, is just going gangbusters.
Where is this? Where does this happen? Where is this gangbuster crap happening? Except on bullshit. Pyramid power. Oh, that's another video to do. The pyramid magnet. Oh, cripes.
well, you know.
Ken Wheeler begging for money for a pyramid magnet. A guy who spends, like I said, $100 grand a year on cameras, begging for a few $100s to buy a pyramid magnet. Amazing.
I subscribe more to David, to the Hilster's model. You're in trouble. It's what I say, as I say to everybody who has a theory. If you don't question your own stuff, you don't question even your own subscribing.
So again, more bullshit. Somehow he knows people haven't questioned their own theory and haven't found flaws in it, or haven't had other people point out flaws. That's the whole point here. That's the whole point of my channel. For 7 years, I propose something. People point out why it can't be, and then I point out how it can be, and then it's back and forth, and the thing evolves into something. And now it's finally in some kind of form where I've disposed of 90% of the arguments against it. It's solid because I've tested it hard. Where have you been open to testing? I can't test your theory, right? Because I've made video responses. You don't pay any attention. You don't pay any attention to what's typed in the comments section. You don't deal with any of the critiques. You just run away from them. You just ignore them.
To something, someone else will find the mistake, correct it, make a better model, and move on, and you'll be left in the dust. You'll either be left in the dust as a subscriber or left in the dust as a person trying to come up with better models. That's just...
Yeah, this more nonsense about how this has anything to do with reality. Again, the idea is there's a truth to be described accurately. And you either do it well or you do it badly. And the point is most of the dissidents are doing it badly, very badly.
I'm not telling you. This is the way it works. This is the way the world works. All right, my last slide. It will all shake out. You know, it's like, Dave, you're just telling us all the... What was I telling you? We must unite. Okay, that's great. But what's going to happen? You mean we'll never get to something? There's always going to be no.
So here, finally, the you know, bad ideas will die. So I mean, he typed that in the context of us understanding that Einstein's idea is completely unevidenced. The Eddington experiment that got him a headline in the New York Times, Einstein proven right, is a garbage experiment. The whole concept of bent space doesn't mean anything. Bent space-time, it has no physicality whatsoever, and it's lasted 100 years. So what are you talking about, bad ideas die? They die hard. Again, we're sitting in a world full of religious kooks. Where's the bad ideas dying? The bad ideas are thriving because we live in an idiocracy. A world full of idiots who think they are entitled to an opinion when they have nothing. They've done no work to acquire enough knowledge to have an opinion.
It will all shake out. Good ideas will be copied or agreed upon. Bad ideas will die. This will only happen when we work together.
Again, this working together. Where's the example anywhere? Where's the example of this? Newton had his arguments with people. Every scientist has had. There's no working together. It's just horse shit.
How can good ideas be copied if we're not working together? How can bad ideas die because no one's using them? Right now, if everybody's isolated, no one cooperates, they're all dead. They're all dead. And this will only happen if we meet and discuss and debate.
I mean, it's just such bullshit. Somehow we are supposed to, in the collective of a bunch of idiot fans, right? And that's all they are, idiots. And so the people who have some sort of knowledge of the subject are supposed to argue with each other, agree on a consensus somehow, which appears to be impossible because facts don't matter and evidence doesn't matter. And you just tell a bunch of wacky conspiracy theory stories. So, I mean, where's the evidence of any of this happening? Where you're filtering and you know, getting the cream to rise to the top. You're not doing any of that.
Challenge. And the last thing, change. I remember the guy that my dad's helping write a book, he's an etherist. And I gave a talk about the neutrino. The neutrino doesn't exist, and I gave all my arguments for it. Not my arguments, most of them are Karzani's arguments. But, you know, you pick up on it. And the guy came up to me right before his talk, goes, I wish I would have seen your talk ahead of time. I would have adjusted my model because, you know, I'm trying to model what's there, and he's right. Doesn't mean, I'm not saying I'm right, the neutrino doesn't exist, although...
Oh, you are, but whatever. I mean, oh, you could just go on and on. So anyway, he gets in the rest of it. He starts playing Ken Wheeler's video, and he just plays it. He doesn't critique any part of it in detail. He never saw a Ferro-cell before. So again, these things have been around for 4 years now at least. Never even heard of it. No. Again, what's the point of critiquing from ignorance? And that's all he's doing. He's critiquing from superficial contact. I read Ken Wheeler's book. I've watched Ken Wheeler's videos. I have a right. My critiques have some sort of substance. Yours don't have any because you have no knowledge. You haven't heard him in any real sense. So anyway, this went on forever. But it needs to be done. There's no solution to this problem. I mean, there's no way to fix this dilemma we're in. All I can say is that all the people who have an opinion should want, at a minimum, a fair chance to present their case at trial and to have it fairly judged. Not judged by idiots who just go, "What's your motivation for this?" You know, that somehow it gets to some of the actual evidence and the facts. And that's all we can do is hope for a fair chance to defend what seems obvious to us. But you can't go to trial without first going to mock trial, at least without first testing. And I would say all of these theories are so underdeveloped that they almost can't be tested because they've so disconnected them from experimental evidence. They're so disconnected from the two-slit experiment and from, you know, all the mechanical crap that we know is the truth about how magnets and motors and all this stuff works. You can't just, you know, you have to model it. You have to draw a picture of it somewhere. And nobody's doing that. Except me. No, anyway, enough of a rant. But yeah, this is a dismal position to be in because, frankly, again, people who don't know anything about the subject, their support or complaints can't mean anything. And what we really need is the opportunity to challenge each other in face-to-face battles. I invite anybody who wishes to defend conventional physics. I can get you in this room. You can talk in this video face to face. You don't have to, just have a microphone that works. Make your arguments. Explain to me why your theory is so solid, even though you don't have an explanation for how a magnet works, and you don't have a clue about what creates a photon, and and you have a wacky non-energy mechanism creating gravity. Anyway.